Welcome back, Red Spotters. Measuring in the Red Spotlight podcast. I'm your host today, Alexis J. Soto, joined by Mr. Peter Martinez. We are back for actually what is going to be our very first news-heavy episode in just about over a month. And so much has happened since then. Of course, we've been busy doing the, as Peter Martinez coined himself, the Ghost-tober Bootacular, which is now in its entirety all up on our channel, whether it be the commentaries and episodes for Red Spotlight or also the material that we've done for To the Table, all of which I think has been easily the best October in terms of like concentrated theming in 5 years of doing a podcast together. And so thank you to Peter Martinez for arranging all of those things. He has been a very valuable asset in that regard. It is, I think, the most amount of work he's put into this podcast since I originally supposedly gave him the name of social media correspondent back in the days of the Barely News Crew, the good old Barely News Crew. I don't want to dwell too much on that, but it was a bullshit title I gave him just to make him feel important. I should have realized that shit doesn't work on Peter, and he didn't do any of the work there anyway, so there's that. A little bit of a tangent, but...
So you admit it was bullshit.
A lot of things that happened were bullshit. Whether they were by design or my own thing, I don't know. It just... If they weren't in the beginning, they definitely were at the end. I'll tell you that. But anyway, we're here with episode 274. We're talking about the latest materials that have happened in the movie world, whether it be the business side or brand new, any kind of projects that are happening. We're talking about two movie reviews. Get that, not one but two movies that we're talking about for the first time, new movies in 2020 for the first time in months. We're talking both of them, I know, wow. Right? Both of them having featured Sacha and Cohen. We're talking about Borat 2 or Borat subsequent movie film, or one of the titles that it is called.
That's right, people. It's Sacha Baron Cohen month.
And we're talking about The Trial of Chicago 7, which was written and directed by Aaron Sorkin, of fame from The Social Network, Newsroom, Steve Jobs, a whole bunch of stuff. He's a good writer. I like him. I think Peter likes him too. And we'll be talking about that movie, as well as Borat. And also with updates on what is going on in the industry. A lot of panic, a lot of crying after the failure of Christopher Nolan and Tenet, and it was a failure, a big failure, I might add. And so was Mulan, one of the biggest box office bombs of all time. So there is that notoriety to it. But since last we have updated you, whether it had been the last month, movie theaters have kind of basically called it a day, except for AMC. Regal announced that, hey, we're closing up, guys, because you know what? All the movies, literally all of the movies have moved. The only film left standing for the calendar that is a blockbuster of sorts would be Wonder Woman 1984, and that of course is expected to move, and we're going to be discussing more in depth what that means, as well as other movies that have tried to get themselves bought by streamers, whether it be James Bond, No Time to Die, asking for $600 million to Netflix or Apple, and the whole behind the scenes stuff that happened there that's very much intriguing. We're going to give Peter his opportunity to respond to one of our previous news shows where Kyle was on talking about the multiverse, the stuff that Marvel has cooking up in the next couple of years. And rest assured, Peter will bring his signature brand to... well, you know Peter Martinez. He will be very Peter about the whole thing. And then it's going to be fun. I don't want you to miss that out.
What does that mean?
It means that it speaks for itself. And we'll also give the Fantasy Fair podcast a little bit of a breather. We will we cover the bad Disney news stories for them. Even though that they're the Disney podcast, we're given the stuff to basically take these shots at Disney, but I think they're well deserved. But for whatever reason, the Fantasy Fair doesn't want to talk about these things. We'll be talking about Disneyland versus California. And that's going to be fun to talk about. Peter, you want to say something, don't you?
Fuck the Fantasy Fair.
Fantasy Fair, I should remind the audience, Peter says that lovingly because it is, of course, our sister podcast on our Red Spotlight, under our Red Spotlight network. So just keep in mind, Peter is known for his very infamous sarcasm, if that's the way we want to put it. So that's the show today.
There is no love. Cancel the podcast.
Before we get into today's show, I do want to remind everyone, of course, that November is once again going to mark a themed month, as we like to do, of course, in the absence of new material, and frankly, of things to discuss. Peter and I like to get into film. That's what this podcast is, right? Last year, we did that with the Scorsese Files, as we coined them, where we dug into the long history of Martin Scorsese's filmography. And this year, for the month of November, we are doing the same with, we'll call him an artiste of a high caliber, Mr. Guillermo del Toro. We're going to be talking about all of the movies that he's directed, all 10 of them. They'll be presented in 3 episode installments. And it's going to be very interesting. It's a wonderful carryover, I feel, from October, where there is still a little bit of horror in there, but they're more fantastical. And I can't wait for those conversations. And of course, we'll also be talking about The Good Place, the series that was created by Michael Schur, also known for Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Parks and Recreation, The Office. David Francisco, especially, is a huge fan of this series. He even listens to a podcast called The Good Podcast, where they go into the people who make the show go in like a whole, like this behind the scenes stuff going on, and a lot of the ethics involved with the series. So I got into it in a really big way. I loved it, and Peter likes it too. And so we'll be having 2 episodes covering all 4 seasons of The Good Place. And speaking of Fantasy Fair, as you gave him a beautiful shout out with that wonderful language, Peter.
Fuck them.
This month in November, doesn't he love them so? This month they'll be covering The Muppets. You love The Muppets, don't you, Peter?
I love what the Muppets used to be.
Until
before
Disney
the dark
ruined it.
times.
Oh my God.
Before the Disney Empire.
So that is a recap of all of the wonderful stuff that we have coming your way here at our beautiful podcast network. Now, let's go ahead and start this episode. Peter, I want to ask you, how are you? We are literally a week out from an election. And I wonder, are we like on pins and needles here? Are we just like over it? How are we?
I mean, if you saw the message I had just sent you, you know how I am.
Every feeling, every emotion ever.
Oh, God. It's funny, right? Because... And maybe this is just the shitty way my brain works, but I also think it's reality.
Like coronavirus. Since you were the only one to see it coming a mile away. I mean, hell, I'll say you one thing. If you were working in the administration with a reasonable president, obviously, not this one, you would have done nothing. You would have been fired and killed a long time ago. But if you had a reasonable president, if they had listened to you, we wouldn't have, well, I mean, they would have fired you. And you would have been like, probably, you know. Point is, had people listened to what you said back in January, there would have been a good chance this year would have turned out differently.
Yeah, absolutely. But like, with that administration, it's anybody could have told
pointless.
them.
Yeah. Well, they knew. We know they knew.
Jesus,
the stuff that's leaked out
himself could have floated down from the sky and said, "My children, beware COVID," and then all the Republicans would deny him and make Trump their new god, which they basically already have. And,
I mean, it's kind of baked in at this point.
Yeah, So there's nothing no one could have done. But okay, what was my original point? Oh yeah. I feel like a lot of people were looking at November 3rd like they just want to crawl to that finish line. Like we just need to get there. That's the end. The way my brain works, it's like November 3rd is the beginning. That's the way I'm thinking. That's the way my brain That's the way my brain works. And it's not great because it obviously it leads me to worry about things, but then I'm always right to worry, so then it makes me worry even more, which just makes me malfunction, like with COVID.
Yeah, I gotta look. We've been covering a lot of the stuff that has happened with the election for a lot of this year, literally the beginning of this year with To the Table, and it's continued with Red Spotlight with all the stuff that has happened in the country. And last we came to you with a news podcast. I'm talking to the audience here. We were mourning the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and here we are on the night that Amy Coney Barrett is confirmed as a justice on the court, because of the evil Republicans and the weak and feckless Democrats.
Yep.
And the ones who end up getting punished are us. Because that's the joke's always on us, isn't it?
Yeah.
It can be up to anybody else to be
Joker's
evil
making a lot
or
of
weak.
sense now, huh?
Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh jeez.
Society.
But yeah, it's no. I mean, it's a moment to take into account. I mean, tonight we have a new Supreme Court justice, and tonight Obamacare died, and the entire presidency of Barack Obama has at last been wiped away from history because of this. So it's as if the last 10 years literally meant nothing. I mean, we knew that before, but this literally means that maybe even the last 50 years have meant nothing because of her confirmation.
This Supreme Court justice thing like perfectly encapsulates the problem we're in.
Oh, yeah.
Because you have the Republicans doing this, so you have to deal with their evil asses. But then this problem can be solved. It 100% can be. It literally just requires the Democrats to have a spine. Which, if you're a hopeful person, your hope just plummets at the thought of the Democrats actually. So I think it's a great encapsulation of the trouble. Just the politics of the United States, in which the Republicans, despite the fact that they're fucking evil and the majority of Americans do not believe or follow anything they say, they get to control government as wildly like a monkey controlling a machine gun. And all it takes is the Democrats to stop them is to have a spine. And because that's just not gonna happen, it'll continue. So, I want to reiterate, vote for Joe Biden, obviously, because I think this is the best way to look at it. None of these people are your friends. They're all enemies. So you pick your enemy. Voting is about picking your enemy. And I much rather have Joe Biden as an enemy than Donald Trump as an enemy. Joe Biden, like we've said a million times before, is better in every single conceivable way to Donald Trump. But from there, you push and you fight because he is your enemy. And then when it comes to primaries, you primary the fuck out of any Democrat that doesn't get in line with a better tomorrow. It's always about picking your enemies.
I of course second that, but therein lies the question. It was a little bit hidden in the question that I asked first, in terms of how are we feeling with it being a week out from an election. Well, how does the race look like to you now that the two
This is
debates
the
have concluded, and
waiting
now we're
game.
just basically, we're just when you, yeah, that this is the waiting period, because really, I think there's little else that can happen in the race the next few days that can really shift anything. The Supreme Court, I will say real quick, because I feel like the Kavanaugh thing helped Republicans in the midterm elections get them excited to come out and vote, and we could have won some seats that we didn't because of that whole Kavanaugh situation. But this Barrett confirmation, maybe because it was so easy, maybe because it was so under wraps, if anything, it may have actually helped the Democrats.
I mean,
in terms of the voters, I'm not sure. Yeah. That's like, it remains to be seen. I just don't know if the Republicans, besides the Trump diehards, are really excited for the election.
That many within the Democratic establishment didn't put up much of a fight because they'd rather use this as a way to say, see, Republicans bad, vote for us. I don't know. I'm the kind of person, if you had fought tooth and nail to prevent this, that would make me more willing to want to vote for you than just sitting back and saying, man, they're doing a lot of shitty things. Wouldn't it be nice if they weren't in power? And it's like, yeah, but it would also be nice if you use whatever power you have now to do something about it, because then that tells me when you have even more power, you'll do more. You know what? I'm gonna make my big prediction. What's today? Today is October 26th, 2020. I am on the West Coast, and it is 9:30 p.m. exactly.
We're gonna record it now. Your prediction for all right.
It's in the books. We can come back and see how accurate my predictions are. Just looking at the polls and just having followed politics my entire life, I feel like I have a just pretty good gut reactions to which way the wind is blowing. I definitely felt it in 2016, and it scared the shit out of me. And a part of me really didn't want to believe it, but it got me even more scared. And then, the fucking Trump won. Looking back, if anyone was even barely paying attention, they should have seen it coming. But this time around, though, notwithstanding fuckery that might happen with the courts.
That will happen. Well, the courts is a little bit of a question. I think the fuckery on behalf of the GOP and what they're going to plan via voter suppression, ballot burning, whatever, or, all that voter ID laws. When you factor all that, that's the fuckery on behalf of the GOP establishment. The courts is a different question, but there's likely going to be some kind of a court situation happening.
Withholding any of that, I think this could probably be the biggest blowout in modern political history. I really do believe that.
That is just a very bold prediction. You're saying
it's very, very
400
bold.
electoral votes? Is that within reach, you feel, with Joe Biden? That would include winning Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Texas, Iowa, Pennsylvania, Ohio. I mean, that I'm not saying
it's within reach. I'm not saying he's gonna do it, but it's absolutely within reach. I'm definitely not saying he's gonna do it, but it is within reach.
Right.
I see him hitting at least 330 electoral.
Yeah, that could happen. I see this race. Let me just see if I can summarize this. I see this race exactly how you see it in terms of which way. You can feel it, though, when you see that which way the wind is blowing. And it's definitely blowing at warp speed in a certain direction. Almost everything is going wrong for one candidate, and almost everything is going right for the other candidate. And in terms of like the fundamental components of this race, I agree completely. But I feel like, to me, there are two outcomes. One is what you just said, and two is the more conservative approach that I'm taking, which is the only conservative anything I've ever done in my life. But I mean, out of an abundance of caution, and I'm not going to make a prediction for the sake of the universe, so don't get your hopes up there. But I will say that one of the scenarios that I feel is more than likely is a disaster. All those things that you chalked up to fuckery. To me, it's already a foregone conclusion that's going to take place. I mean, we know it's going to take place. I think the question is whether or not it'll be enough to even like change the direction of the individual states one way or the other. I mean, and I've been gearing up toward this the whole year, and I've been looking at the red states that are technically battleground states that are controlled by GOP-led legislatures, and if they do whatever they can to turn around the results, and if Joe Biden ends up winning Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, which most of those will be close, Wisconsin the closest. I think Michigan is getting away from Trump, and Pennsylvania we'll see. But if he just gets those three back, then it still pisses me off, honestly, right? Because like, even if like Hillary was a terrible candidate, but I never thought she was so terrible to the point where she would lose fucking Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Never in my life that I think a Democrat could even fucking lose those states. I think John Kerry and Al Gore carried those states, God's sakes, and she was obliterated. Like, that's like literally that to me, watching those three states fall on election night, it's like watching the Great Wall of China just collapse in front of my eyes. That's what a disaster it was. And if she had held on to those three, this would have never happened. Trump would have never been president. So I've been saying literally for 4 years, if you can just win those three states back, we did it. That's all you got to do. I think there's a good chance. I think there's a greater chance that that's what's going to happen. But again, the fact that those states fell in the first place, to this day, still just enrages me. I understand why. I understand all the components as to what it was. And we don't want to lay down a whole laundry list here at this point. But there's a good chance this can be a blowout election, but considering all the fuckery and how a lot of swing states, to be clear, are very close, I think just about all of the swing states, except for the Midwestern states, are within one or 2 points separating the two candidates. It's going to be a close race in a lot of these swing states. But, and with that, being the reality, I think there's a good chance, 290. I think there's a good chance depending on how close it is, it can be below 300 or it can be close to 400. The path toward victory for Joe Biden. But I guess the question here is, that's if the things that we expect to happen, and no tampering and no outright theft is attempted on the part of the president, whether it be sending federal agents to polling locations, outright closing polling locations, which to me sounds ridiculous because most of the people voting on election day are going to be Republican voters because most Democrats have already kind of mailed in their votes. So I guess the real...
When I think about fuckery, I don't think about any of those things. I think about challenging any ballots mail-in ballots that might get there after November 3rd. Yeah. Because they're already signaling with their new Supreme Court, like, oh, nope, everything needs to be decided on November 3rd. They're already trying to signal that the decision has to be made on November 3rd. And the reason they're doing that... Yeah.
If it's a close race, if it's a 50-50 race, that's going to be disastrous. But that's why you say it's important for it to be a blowout. It needs to be a convincing win in order to stop the fascism from completely taking hold.
The biggest thing to watch, and this is what gets me worried, I think is Florida. Because, like, I'm sorry, any Floridians out there, but fuck Florida.
No, fuck your governor. I'll say that. Fuck Ron DeSantis.
No, fuck the whole state. Like, no. How do I put this? Okay. I believe Florida is one of the few states that like should have everything counted up.
They will. There's no question. They will. Not only will they have everything counted up on the day, we will know by 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock who won.
Sure. And that's my thing. If Biden wins Florida,
it's over.
It's over.
Yeah.
That's it. He wrapped it up. We're good. You know? It's we don't have to worry. If he didn't win Florida and it goes to Trump, that's when the odds start hitting, 60-40. That's when, oh, fuck,
Which is what happened last time, remember? That's how it all started, was when...
Yeah, that's how it started.
When Trump won that state.
Which is when Trump squeaked out a win in Florida. Mm-hmm. But, again, Biden absolutely 100% does not need Florida to win. But if he does win Florida, Trump's chances of winning drop to nothing. He can't win without Florida. And the thing that worries me about Florida is even back in the blue wave of 2018, Florida still went red.
We lost two races. We lost a governor's race and a Senate race to Republicans.
Mm-hmm. It still went red.
Yeah.
And it actually, it was actually, you would add like +2 or 3 to what the polls said, leaning towards Republicans, actually. They actually undervalued Republicans in 2018. Mm-hmm. That was the only place they did, which was in Florida. And you have all this thing about how Republicans registered a shitload of Republicans this go around to vote. And of course the excuse from the Democrats is, oh, COVID, we couldn't go around registering Democrats. Really, that's funny, because when COVID was a big deal, you encouraged all of your voters to go out and vote and make sure Bernie didn't get the election.
Oh, that's right. Thank you for reminding me of that. Yeah. They
didn't give a fuck about COVID then, but it's a Republican. Fuck these cowards. Anyway, we gotta vote them in.
Real quick note on the Florida situation. I was looking at a report this morning that showed that while the Republicans did register brand new voters more so than Democrats, the Democrats are getting more of their registered voters to turn out than the Republicans. So far.
Yeah,
so
but
there's just
so far.
And
again,
Election Day is going to make all the difference with Florida.
The thing with Election Day is Florida is full of old people.
Yeah.
And old people are creatures of habit.
Mm-hmm.
They are used to just walking in on the day. Like they've been voting for 40 plus years, and the way they've always voted is the way they're going to continue to vote. like, believe me, I am an old people expert.
You're Dr. Slate.
I am Dr. They once they have a habit, like, they're gonna keep doing it. None of this fancy smashing mail in. Back in my day, we had to go to the polling place and wait in line, and we voted, and that's how we're gonna do it. So Florida's one to worry about. Definitely. Yeah. Like, that's one I don't know. I genuinely don't know. And I guess that's the way Florida likes it, right?
Yeah, I mean, in my entire lifetime, I don't recall a single race in Florida that hasn't been close. They've all been relatively close. It's a true battleground state, although I think lately it's been leaning more and more red.
I'm surprised it's still a battleground state.
I know.
Because you have just fucking insane people that live there, and then nothing but old, usually white retirees.
The socialist fearing Hispanics from Venezuela and Cuba.
And it's like, I don't know how it hasn't turned just ruby red yet. Like, it's crazy to me that it's still a swing state. But, and that's another thing. Oh, I'm so pissed off. Joe Biden had like 0 Latino outreach. And
that really does not surprise me. Like, no shit. And I told you this was going to happen. They didn't value them. They didn't value them in the primary because they went to Bernie Sanders.
Because it didn't win him.
Right. Yeah. Again, we all knew that the whole people of color thing was used as a weapon against Bernie because they didn't want to acknowledge Latinos or Hispanics as people of color. And that's why Bernie won places in California, Nevada, why he did so well in Texas. And of course, there was an article that said in the immediate aftermath of the primary that this was going to come back to haunt Joe Biden. And guess what? No shit it did, because Joe Biden was very disliked. It wasn't just that they liked Bernie Sanders, that they did not care at all for Joe Biden in the least.
People still don't like Joe Biden. They're just doing it to vote Trump out.
Yeah.
And it's just like, fuck, dude. Like, one of the... immediately after Bernie conceded... the first thing the Biden campaign should have done was go to him and been like, hey, we need you with Latino voter outreach. Like, they should have seen the writing on the wall, especially in Texas. Fucking Texas. I don't think Democrats, I don't think it's likely that they will win Texas, but holy fuck, if they had pushed out a major Latino outreach, it's like a neck and neck right now. It's either dead even or within a point.
With the absence of a major Latino reach at the moment, with the absence of one, it is a dead heat. Had there been one, that would have made all the difference.
That would have made so much of a difference. But I guarantee you, all they were doing was thinking about Florida, and they're like, well, Bernie's toxic towards Florida because Cubans, and he's the socialist god. And it's like, okay, fine, but then you better do some major fucking Florida, Cuban, Latino outreach out there. And then you didn't fucking do it. You should have been signing up people to vote like a motherfucker. And then you didn't fucking do it. So it's like, so frustrating. It's so frustrating.
I would just say they don't want to do that because that would just bring legitimacy to the movement that Bernie Sanders led and his voters. And to me, it didn't surprise me in the least, but the Democratic establishment has been quite hostile. And even after, Sanders bowed at the altar of Biden, and at the moment, just look at what's happening with the news media. Bernie Sanders has done countless rallies, virtual rallies or in-person rallies. Obama did one, and then which one did the newspapers and the TV stations cover? And which one didn't? Of course. So, I mean, just ask yourself what all this really means. I think we know what it means. The point is, vote. Yeah. Election day is coming.
Yeah, vote.
Please, if you haven't already, vote. It's unfortunately, it's going to require a little bit of a extra hazard if you're waiting to do it in person. It sucks and it's disgusting. We should say, even though that there's going to be in-person voting and we want people to show up, it's disgusting that that's even going to be an option. People shouldn't have that option in the middle of a pandemic. The whole country should have moved to mail-in ballot. I'm surprised as many states did as they're actually doing it, but it's a national tragedy that we're holding an election in which it's going to get people infected with coronavirus. Just no question about it. That's what's going to happen. It's going to be a super spreader event. And your government could not be bothered. Just show up and die after the election is what they want, to do with you. Especially, particularly the GOP. But, yeah, yeah. Well, while we transition out of this, I do want to remind everyone, of course, that there is a pandemic going on, and the latest death count in the United States is 226,000 people dead. We're right back up to where the worst was, if not, even worse than that, where over 1,000 people are dying a day. Now we're up to 70,000, 80,000 people getting infected a day, every single day. And the projections keep getting higher and higher. There will be apparently is 200,000 more deaths to come before the end of the year, before the end of January. It is a disaster. Hospitalizations are spiking. The red states, now we can definitely put that back on them. The red states are spiking more now than they ever have because, of course, they're completely lax about it. I think the election will come down to that. And, for all the bashing we do of Joe Biden, I was actually content with his performance in the last debate, at least with the coronavirus section. He's not a great debater by any means, but even he was able to really make a fool out of him. And I'm not even sure if Trump, I know some conservatives loved that performance, that debate performance. I'm not sure if he's ever looked smaller, to be honest with you. He just looked...
He could have shit on stage and they'd claim that it was a 4D chess power move.
Yeah.
The likes of which
what did you think of that
no
debate
leader
performance?
has ever
Am I
done.
wrong?
I think Trump came off as an annoying, whiny child, the way he always has. And surprisingly, again, I don't fucking like Biden. No. I actually think that was his best debate performance this entire election season.
No question.
Including the primaries. I think it was easily his best.
What was to me impressive...
you know how I know it was his best? The one thing that the Republicans came away going like, oh, fuck yeah, this is our smoking gun. We got him, boys. Oh, shit, the Biden's going down. Was Biden going like, yeah, we should be transitioning away from fossil fuels? And Republicans thought that was a slam dunk. I think all of them before, like, it's like, obviously, yeah, the voters are in their own little conservative bubble and that, like, they don't live within reality. But now it's the policymakers and the politicians and all the people, you know, actually part of the party that actually live within the bubble. The fact that they think this Hunter Biden shit means anything is fucking hilarious. It's so funny that they think anyone gives a shit, but they genuinely do think. I don't know. You were gonna say?
No. I think that about covers it. It was quite telling, and
oh, I want to get this on air because I don't know.
What do you want to do?
This to me is like the most interesting that I have no idea what it would go. Is, let's say, as my prediction goes, although fuck, now I don't know because of Florida, but I do think all these other states like Michigan and all these, Biden will win. But let's say the election gets called that night, right? November 3rd.
What does Trump do?
What does Trump do? What does he do?
Well, he doesn't.
I honestly don't know.
I think there'll be one of two things. Either he challenges outright and says that he is suing and is trying to get those mail-in ballots disqualified and then get a recount, or he's going to just, all right, guys, we had a good run. Bye.
Do you think, like, because it's traditional for the losing side to give a concession speech.
Hillary Clinton didn't follow that until the next day. She went to sleep. She was like, I'm not going to go out in front of that. After losing to Trump, she did not give a concession speech. She did.
Oh, she didn't?
No, remember that? She didn't. She told them all to go home at her headquarters party.
Oh, I went to bed.
Oh, that's right.
Before that.
You were.
I couldn't take it anymore.
I couldn't sleep. And you went to bed.
I didn't sleep. I just moved away from a television.
No. She didn't give a concession speech that night. I think that was the first instance of breaking tradition. She did, however, call him that night to concede officially, and then he gave his speech. But she didn't give a speech until the next morning.
Okay. So yeah, I don't see Trump. You know what I see him doing? I could see him doing a farewell rally. Not a concession speech, a farewell rally. But if you're Donald Trump, I can see him
why would you stop the rallies? You may not win re-election for the presidency, but even the people I've watched on cable news say that doesn't, just because Donald Trump loses the presidency does not mean he's going away. He is a fixture of this Republican Party.
Of the Republicans.
Yes, he does. And so, like, in many ways, he may even be more influential out of the presidency to his own party than being the president.
Think about it, when he's president, all he does is whine that they're doing this and they're doing that. And it's like, what? Are you stupid? Well, he is stupid, but like, you dumb motherfucker, you're the president. Do something about it. Why are you fucking whining?
I don't think for a second the Trump rallies are going to end. That's what he loves this thing for.
Of course not. But in a way, I almost think it's perfect. Because you keep these people sort of encased in 2016 in a time capsule.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, you know, Go to the corner, enjoy your rallies. We'll forward humanity as best we can.
Yeah.
And with Trump sucking up all the air, I can't see him like pushing forward a successor. You know what I mean? Because Trump doesn't care about that kind of shit. Like whoever they run in 2024, like I don't know. But that's thinking ahead.
Or he could run himself again. He would be eligible to run again for the presidency in 4 years.
Do it, bitch.
He could run again himself, and I wouldn't rule that out. I will say, though, if the key state to look for beside Florida on election night is Pennsylvania. All right, let's say Trump wins Florida.
Do you think Pennsylvania will be close?
I don't want it to be close. I don't think it's going to be as close as other states for sure. I have reason to believe Biden has a comfortable 3, 4, 5 point buffer in that state that he will win. I think he will win that state. However, if you're coming at it from the opposing viewpoint, what I'm going to say is Trump doesn't, it's not enough to win Florida. If he ends up winning Pennsylvania, that will put him at to get to 270. That is to say, he needs to win both of those states to win the re-election. He can't just win one of them. Florida is big, but he also needs Pennsylvania, and he needs to hold on to Arizona, and that's looking not great.
Oh yeah, Arizona. Yeah, there's a lot of like. Even though I'm worried about Florida, Biden is still technically leading in Florida, right?
He's leading in all the polls, but I can't believe that. I just can't believe that. Like, because it's the state has trended so red lately, unless like the seniors ended up doing him in Florida. But like those polls that showed like that show Biden ahead right now, Hillary was also ahead in the polls. In every poll, I think, back in 2016 when that state.
The state polls were definitely more trash back then. I believe they've somewhat better. The national polls were pretty accurate.
That's right.
Yeah. Florida, it's just
Remember,
Florida. I don't know.
If we had no electoral college and if we just had straight up popular vote, there'd be no question who'd win.
Oh yeah, it would be over. Like I wouldn't even. I'd just be sleeping soundly that night. Like, oh yeah, let me know how Biden's speech went. Like that's.
But we have an electoral college.
But that's democracy, and we don't live in a democracy.
No, we don't. So catch us next week and see if we're still alive. So my prayers be with you all.
Depending on how things go, there might not be shows next week.
That is a very, very good warning to forebode to every one of you. But yes, coronavirus has continued to be an issue with the industry that we cover, and that would be the movies, right? And in the last month that we've not been doing the weekly updates because quite frankly, it's a little samey. And a lot of this is samey, but there have been more official moves to this stance that have happened to indicate a lot of different things. First and foremost, most of the, if not all, beside Warner Brothers' Wonder Woman movie have moved away from the 2020 calendar. They're gone. And of course
Bye-bye.
And Wonder Woman's expected to leave as well. And what else did we really fucking expect? If you've been listening to this show all year long, God bless you. I guess you have. God help you if you've been listening to us all year long. But if you have, then you know this was a foregone conclusion. And I think Peter and I were talking about even in April and May, like, yeah, maybe August, maybe October. But by the time we got to July, I think it was all but like July and August, it was all but like the writing was on the wall, and it's hitting these studios in a way they just didn't think it would. But thank you to Christopher Nolan and Tenet for flopping and failing so hard to prove the point that in a pandemic, movie theaters just cannot be open because you cannot sustain yourself financially, which is why Regal Cinemas announced that they were closing. That's it. There's no movies to release, and they don't feel the need to bother. Because, I mean, I don't know if it's been mentioned, but because of Nolan's idiotic ego and this need to push forward to reopen movie theaters along with everything else in this country, that ended up hurting movie theaters even more so than if they just stayed closed.
Thank you, Christopher Nolan, for saving film. You did it. Good job. So proud of you. Really, really, really fucking worth it, wasn't it? You stupid motherfucker.
Yeah, that's what happened.
Those are my feelings.
Yeah, that's what
it.
happened. And with that, Soul, the Disney Pixar film, was the first major movie that's going to be on Disney Plus, not Mulan. Mulan notwithstanding. But it's not going to be a premiere access as it was for Mulan. It seems as if Disney has admitted that's all but failed, and that's going to be available to you if you're a Disney Plus subscriber. So we're going to catch Soul on Christmas Day, which to me, I am disappointed, of course, like with many of these other movies, that I'm not going to be able to catch it in a movie theater screen, because that would have been an amazing experience. But I have such high hopes for this movie. That I think on Christmas Day, and with the subject matter that it is, I can think of no better movie to close out this awful year than with Soul. So you know what?
A sweet release.
Yeah, and I think it's actually a smart play, because as Disney announced lately that they're restructuring everything around Disney Plus, which is the only thing making a buck these days for the company, and it is smart timing on their part, because, December is the month where a lot of people are going to have to be deciding to renew their subscription or cancel it. And of course, wouldn't you know that, with the service being dormant all year long, basically, until the time comes for you to renew the service or not, in the month of December, they're going to give you the movie Soul. Mulan is going to be, they're going to tear down the paywall, and it'll be available to subscribers. For those that haven't seen it yet. You're also going to get WandaVision, and you're going to get the final episodes of The Mandalorian Season 2, which that, by the way, is, debuting on the 30th of October, this Friday as we're recording. So look, they have a lot of content. Finally, they have a lot of content happening in December. And I think it may end up being fruitful for them. And since it is now becoming top priority for Disney, one can hope that in 2021, we won't spend most of the year with literally nothing to review from that service but documentaries. But hey, there's that. Yeah, I think what's fascinating to me about this entire story is not so much what ended up happening, but just the complete deluded states that people allowed themselves to become into thinking that, this really could have worked. This relaunch of movie theater going in the middle of a pandemic. There were some in the media that were criticizing Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, for not allowing movie theaters to open in his state, as if that really did anything. Because without the state of New York, 70 to 75% of movie theaters were open in the U.S. And you know how many people went to the movies each week? About $3 million worth. That is pathetic. That is no one. No one is making any money off of that. It just isn't working. And it's not worth it, obviously. Even if there were new movies, but there were none. So, of course, that. And I think Tenet made $1 million in the U.S. this past week. That's awful. That's pathetic. And the fact that people thought that this would be profitable in the middle of a pandemic, the stupidity is just amazing to me. It really is. But I guess the bigger story is, like, people, I think, are getting themselves so crazy. And what I find particularly disgusting, Peter, and this is a good way to kind of transition to the whole Disneyland thing, because it does involve Disney and the kind of brinksmanship that they're bringing up here. But I find it really distasteful that everyone and their supporters, whether it be, Disney themselves and their fans from the parks side, or also even the films side, I see alike two groups of people that don't necessarily go together in every context, but in this context they do. Movie fans, film fans, and theme park fans, the Disney theme park fans, all kind of uniting to criticize the Democratic governors who are literally trying to keep people from dying and blaming them for not opening up their theme park or not opening up their theaters and pointing the finger at them and saying it's your fucking fault that things are this bad. Fuck you. And I find that entirely it's just disgusting that when they're the only people right now in the country that are doing a damn thing about COVID. The only people. The governors of New York and California. And yet they're the ones who are responsible for these people crying about, I can't go to Disneyland. I can't go to a movie theater.
Because it's specifically when it comes to Disney. Because, I mean, with theaters, I've said what I have to say about that. There's always two things, right? One, it's people that obviously just love Disney and want to go to Disneyland, and they just want to do whatever the fuck they want to do. And then when you point that out, they're like, well, no, it's about the jobs, it's about the economy, people need to make a living, they need to do this, they need to do that. It is the same with the movie theaters. It's the same with all of this. They always talk about like, oh, well, you know, we need to open it up because people's work and this and that. And it's like, awesome. Where was this fucking energy when we needed relief, right? Like financial relief from the government. Instead of protesting in front of Disneyland because you want to go eat a churro and blog about it to your 3,000 subscribers, why weren't you in front of the White House demanding massive COVID $1 trillion recovery?
The Capitol,
the Capitol
building, even in Washington, D.C., the Senate.
That is just not going to get passed now. Because guess what? After they got their nomination, they're like, well, we're shutting down the government. Sorry, guys. See you next year. Well, not next year, but where was any of that energy? Nowhere to be found. So take your complaints about movie theaters, take your complaints about Disney and Disney employees, and your anger at Newsom and the California government for keeping it closed, and just so politely, you know, shut the fuck up. Shove it. Like, I don't care. I don't want to hear it.
It's just so offensive. And part of this, and you and I had discussed this, part of this stems from what a horrible job America does with education, in that it seems as if most Americans have no understanding of how government functions, in that it is the responsibility of the president, you know, the executive branch, and the legislative branch, the Congress. They're the ones who agree to spend money. And so it isn't the responsibility, it isn't actually even within the power of the individual governors or the state legislatures to pass aid or relief. That falls on the Congress. And who controls that? The Republicans and Donald Trump. And so if everyone out there listening is mad that you're being crushed, that your business is dying, and you're sad for those in your life that are losing as a result of this pandemic, there is no one else to look to than the President of the United States and his party that controls Congress that has refused to pass aid. And keeping it real, of course, the first CARES Act that did pass back in March was nowhere near substantial enough, and most of that money ended up going to that 0.1%, their friends on Wall Street that they warned back in January how tough this is going to be for them, but told the rest of us, don't worry about it, it's going to go away. It's really obvious what's going on, and I just find it offensive that you would point to the only people in power who are doing a damn thing to keep us safe. There is a pandemic. It is killing people. 226,000 dead. That's the priority. The economy matters too, but Governor Newsom and Governor Cuomo can't do a damn thing about that. That falls on the Republicans. And as far as the whole thing with Disney is concerned, this is the thing that really gets me so annoyed and disgusted with Disney fans, is that I feel like they're using the whole like, well, it's not because we want the park to open for ourselves. It's because our friends are suffering and they need work and they need relief and everything.
They're so full of
That
shit.
is, yeah. I feel like they use that as like a scapegoat. Really, I don't think that's what they're really concerned about, because look at what the company has done. Just a few weeks ago, Disney fired 28,000 people in the entire company. And when they announced that, what did they do? They said, this is not our fault. This is what happens when the governor of California doesn't allow us to open up in the middle of a pandemic. So because of that, we're going to blame it on him. When in reality, they're just trying to shift the blame. And of course, their supporters and their followers follow suit with that, right? They don't want to be the ones that were responsible when they obviously were. And of course, no one brings up the fact that a month prior to laying off 28,000 people, all of the executives had their salaries reinstated, their full salaries reinstated, when that alone could have paid to keep all of the hired hands on instead of dropping them like pieces of shit, which is what Disney did to all those cast members. There's stories that have come out where, you know, certain cast members that had been there a long time through seniority, they were tricked into giving up their status to working in a certain section of the park because they wanted to work at that part of the park, but they had to give up their seniority to it, and they were the ones that were the first to get fired, the first to get laid off notices. You say that, and I think you're right when you say Disney is just being a company, right? So we shouldn't have expected anything more than this, right? I think the part that's the most upsetting is how the people are reacting to this, and how they're just like swallowing this shit and thinking that it's actually real and true. I mean, the outrage should stop at the fact that there are people that want to go to a theme park in the middle of a pandemic. You would think that that would be as bad as it got, but no, it's even further than that. Like in this year of wonderful protests with Black Lives Matter, there have been protests to end the lockdown. There have been protests at Disneyland to get Disneyland to reopen. But I am happy with the governor of California, though, just to put a button on this Disney issue where he said, you can't open up Disneyland until you get your COVID-19 cases down to 2%. Boom. It ain't happening. And he flat out said, 2020, get it out of your minds, people. It's not happening. Finally, someone says that.
If you're unhappy with this, vote. The national response that Trump did was just absolutely terrible. I heard this the other day, and it's 100% true. And again, this person I'm about to mention, I do not like them. I do not like them at all. But if Hillary Clinton were president, we probably would have had about 50,000 deaths total, and Republicans would be crying and screaming about those 50,000 deaths now until forever. I mean, I grew up hearing about Benghazi endlessly, about how it was the worst thing that could have ever happened in the history of the world ever. But 225 plus thousand dead is, yeah, well, you know, we gotta live with it, you know, just move on, okay? We're learning. Trump literally goes out in his now, like, this is literally a talking point now. He's like, oh, the media won't shut up with COVID. They're always talking about COVID. That's literally your president. Literally your president, who's annoyed that he has to deal with all of you dropping dead. And then on top of that, he never provided you with any relief. It was a one-time check of about $1,000 or so, and then said, good luck lasting an entire year on that. I'm sure you'll do great. If you're not willing to decry that, then don't come to me crying about how we need to open up. Because if you had been fighting where you should have been fighting from the beginning, maybe we'd have COVID relief. And people's jobs would be in a secure place. maybe if more public pressure was applied to Trump, maybe we'd be in a better spot.
Well said. Before we move off this topic of, industry-changing events, you want to discuss the situation that happened recently with James Bond. The latest movie, No Time to Die, otherwise known as Bond 25, was scheduled to be released April this year, but obviously that was pushed in November, and then that was taken off, and currently is scheduled to be opened in April of 2021. But it was leaked that there were discussions with MGM, the Broccoli producing family of the Bond franchise, with streamers like Netflix and Apple TV Plus, trying to shop it around and see who can fork up the dough, basically, and sell this big blockbuster movie on their streaming service. They asked, the big ask, $600 million, which, of course, is an unprecedented ask. No such acquisition of a streamer to a movie has ever happened where it's that much money. I think some of the reports suggested that some, like Apple, were willing to go as high as $300 million. But there obviously wasn't a deal. It's been leaked because it's such a good story, right? A lot of interesting things that would have happened had that have gone through, would have changed a lot of different things. But there's still interesting information to be had from this. It says a lot about both of the parties involved in the discussions about where they think movie theater or movie-going experiences are going to be in the next year or so. Peter, your thoughts on this entire story?
This one's really interesting, right? Because if this would have passed, it would have been monumental. It would have been the biggest sort of shift as far as film releases.
Well, we thought that was going to happen with Mulan, right? Like, that was the big move.
But Mulan was shit.
And it flamed out.
Yeah, it was whatever. But James Bond is a huge established name, right? And it's not like a James Bond spinoff. It's James fucking Bond.
Mm-hmm.
It is, not only is it James fucking Bond, it's what's his fucking name?
Daniel Craig.
Daniel Craig's final outing as James Bond, right? Like, this is a big thing as far as movies.
Remember, Skyfall grossed $1 billion worldwide. It is a very, very popular franchise to hit the $1 billion club. Yes.
So to see a film and a franchise of this stature hit the small screens, and the price tag paid for it, it's a game changer, right? It didn't happen, but maybe the fact that the talks are even being made is interesting enough. Apparently, the offer, I don't know if it was Netflix or Apple TV, was $300 million.
Yep.
And they wanted double, which I think, they were right to pass, because to pay $600 million for one movie is fucking insane.
And at the same time, though, I don't think that the Broccoli's were unjustified in that ask. They did they spend a lot of money to make that movie. It's a blockbuster for a reason.
That is true, right? And then that's where, because for years, right, we've been wondering, like, fuck, is this the end of movie theaters?
Right.
It is the end of movie theaters for smaller films. Like, let's be real.
That's been the case before a pandemic. After a pandemic, that's, you can gabble that.
Well, after a pandemic, maybe people just want to go out and see fucking whatever, So they'll watch smaller films. But before, smaller films being in the theaters, no. Now, though, I think it's very apparent movie theaters are not going anywhere. They can't. Because the only way they can make the big dough, which is what these studios are all in now, right? Like, all the studios are just massive blockbuster franchise films. It's not even just blockbusters anymore. They have to be franchise.
Yeah.
And you can't make that money on streaming. If you want to make the big dough, you need movie theaters. You need them. And I think this is a sign. If it went through, it would be What was that?
It was a water bottle. It just cracked.
Oh, okay.
It was weird. It's like, what was...
What's that?
What's what?
Nothing.
I know you're trying to get me, you bitch. No, I didn't turn around. No.
Good, because it's staring.
Good.
You looked.
I can see behind me, you know that? Like, I have a screen right here that shows me the picture of me.
Well, you got so scared that you had to put a screen to show you behind you.
Continue your point.
What was my point? Oh, yeah, if the deal did go through, it's like, holy fuck,
Mhm.
you know, times are changing. But the fact that it didn't, and honestly, I feel that it wasn't even close, because they say, you know, highest we're going is 300 million, and they say lowest we're going is you doubling it. Yeah, you're not close to making a deal. Shows, despite the fact that, you know, blockbusters and the movie theaters and the whole film industry has just been pushed to the brink by COVID, the only way it survives is through movie theaters, at least for big films.
The other alternative
and people
is...
are always going to want big films.
I mean, you're right. Yeah, that's kind of the only reason why theaters, in large part, are so prevalent. You can make the argument like other kind of analog materials that would have died out years ago, but it is those big blockbuster movies that have kept movie going alive for such a long time. And the alternative is, if you can't have one without the other, is what you're saying, right? And that is, if movie theaters go, then so do blockbuster movies. You just can't make those movies with the kind of money that you're going to get as a result. There's no point. You're throwing money away. You'll go bankrupt.
But Americans only have a hunger for blockbusters.
Exactly.
And really the whole world. There's
Yeah.
a reason why they've come to dominate the entire film industry. So,
Like if
no matter how
people
long
were
it
wondering,
takes-
there's a reason why Marvel movies and Star Wars movies aren't on Disney Plus. They don't debut on Disney Plus.
yeah. We'll toss you your Mandalorian bones, but the big films,
And that
they're
is pretty
not
pricey.
for
I
me.
mean, it's $10 million an episode from what I hear. I mean, that's big money for television. Remember, television and movies are just so different. But people, again, like this is just most I would guess just don't know this because there's no education to it, right? Like you have to know, I think, a certain amount about this industry to understand what you understand, Peter, and that is just a very plain reality. So, like, I guess, like, is this to you? So what you just said is because deals like this with no time to die couldn't be made. Does that make you feel better then about the survival of movie theaters after the pandemic? I think it made me feel better about there still being theaters around after this is all over.
I think theaters will always exist as long as movies are being made.
Right.
I would say. I think it's pretty obvious that while streaming has absolutely skyrocketed,
Mm-hmm.
it's not... It just doesn't seem to be replacing anything right now. And it's not close to being replaced.
Well,
Again,
yeah.
if we were anywhere close to replacing movie theaters, this would have done it. Like, this would have pushed it to the brink where... But it didn't, so... Yeah.
One other tidbit about this that I feel it kind of reveals. I found it very revealing, right? Because as I mentioned before, MGM and the Broccoli's had rescheduled again, Bond 25 to be released in April of 2021. And yet they were still having talks about sending this to streaming. Does that confirm to you, or at least lead you to suspect that they themselves have no confidence in movie-going experiences returning in April of 2021?
Yeah, see, that's the thing. While in the long run, it gives me hope. Like, yeah, movie theaters don't seem to be going anywhere. In the short run, it's this thing of like, oh, this sense of, you didn't get any movies in the theaters in 2020. I don't know if you should be any hopeful for 2021 either. Which, again, is a wider metaphor for everything else in life, right?
Yeah.
Just because 2020 was bad doesn't mean 2021's going to be better.
A vaccine's expected spring, summertime 2021. I think, to me, the most optimistic I can be to expect some kind of normalcy with theaters are concerned to return late summer, early fall, maybe 2021.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how much of a difference a Biden administration would make, right?
They'd have a pandemic team funded and in place for one. That's a big fucking difference.
Yeah. Like, how different would it be when the people that run our country at least halfway give a shit? How big of a difference would that make?
Right.
That's the biggest, biggest question. My hope is that it would make a huge difference, but
keep in mind, of course, it's not just the White House. There's a good chance the Senate is going to have a change in power as well. So
yeah, but even though we vote November 3rd, it still takes a while until they get into power.
Yeah, January of 2021, right?
Yeah, so it's still going to take time. And right now we're hitting all-time high records.
Yeah.
So, yep. By the way, yeah, so, I don't know, I just want to mention this. Because a lot of people, they talk about COVID and they talk about this, and it's, sure, most people don't die from COVID. Of the millions of people that live in the United States, 220,000. Conservatives loves pointing out, like, 2.01 or whatever.
How very pro-life of them to say.
Yeah, extremely pro-life. It's, if I remember reading the Bible correctly, Jesus, the very people Jesus said was okay to die was, the poor, the feeble, and the sick already,
and Democrats,
children. For
sure, Democrats.
Oh, yeah, obviously. But specifically, the poor and the children, and the sick, they fuck them. I think that was Jesus' exact words, fuck them.
Remember, the president said good to the fact that, the children are in cages and their parents are never going to be found again. So,
well, more than that, he just seemed annoyed that he even had to think about it for 2 seconds.
They're beautiful cages. They're clean.
They're wonderful cages. They're so clean. Borat was ahead of the game on that one with the cages.
Oh, boy.
What was I even fucking saying? Oh, I remember. So people talk about, like, yes, very low mortality rate, all that. But what they don't talk about is, even though a very, very small percentage of people end up dying, everyone collectively in this country has basically lost a year of their life.
At least.
And yeah, and that's because of a government that didn't give a shit. There are people in your life that you have probably not seen in months. There's celebrations you haven't experienced. There's things you wanted to do that you can never do. We had plans, remember?
We had a lot of plans, yeah.
We had a lot of plans. And that was taken from us. Everyone's had that shit taken from them. And it didn't have to be that way. I want to make that very clear. It never had to be that way. This idea that, there's nothing we could have done, it ended up like this because it had to end up like this, that's wrong. That's absolute bullshit. It never had to be like this. And yeah, I don't know. Just felt like throwing that out there.
Well, last thing before we get into our movies that we want to discuss, Marvel, that multiverse prediction you threw out there a couple months back, maybe weeks back, sorry, has come to fruition. Doctor Strange, Jamie Foxx's Electro are in Spider-Man 3. There are ongoing rumors that are very likely about Garfield and Maguire returning to reprise their roles for a multiverse Spider-Man movie. The multiverse event is supposed to be limited, from what I understand, from WandaVision to Spider-Man 3 to Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Multiverse of Madness has ongoing rumors about people like Tom Cruise coming in and playing alternative versions of multiverse Tony Stark and blah, 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 blah. We had a podcast about that a few weeks back with Kyle Lira. I'm not sure if you caught that discussion, Peter. It was interesting. I guess I was very restrained because I didn't want to rain on anybody's parade. But I guess I got my taste of being you for a second there, because Kyle was very optimistic and enthusiastic about all of this. And I was a little bit more tempered. And I have to say, my mood on this changes on the day, right? So there are times when you ask me about this, I'm like, I'm not enthusiastic about all this, which I think that in and of itself is a fail. If you're going to ask, hey, are you enthusiastic about a movie or a series of movies, and you say no, well, that's kind of a lose in that situation. I'm not rooting for it to fail, and neither are you, to be clear. I mean,
No.
You being critical of this stuff, and you will be critical about this, people should understand it is not you wanting these movies to be a disaster, or it's not even also you rooting for you to not like these movies. You've been very clear since the day I've met you about how you are with things. When you see the wind blowing a certain way, you're going to call it out. And if the day comes that you're proven wrong, you have no problem doing so. So just so people don't misunderstand where you come from in that regard. But the more I hear about this, the more annoyed and uninterested I become. And keep in mind, I'm maybe the one who is more open to it, but I'm not really open to it. Like, this kind of feels like a big gimmick, and there's no reason for it but to just do a gimmick. And I want it to be good, but I just feel like this is too much and not interesting enough. I guess that's where I come from. You?
Boy. I think gimmick is the right word for it. It feels like a gimmick. And see, this is the thing, right? When you go back to the original MCU, the fucking decade of films, most of the films weren't great. They were okay. They were good. But there were two things that really lifted them up in my eyes. One, just this sort of shock and realization and just fucking awe at the fact that, wow, I am able to see this character on the big screen, right? The idea of seeing Doctor Strange on the big screen is enough, just enough to make me go crazy. Again, I grew up in the era of the early 2000s in which, and those little slightly later 1990s where the comic book movies weren't amazing. You got maybe a couple every year. Most were shit. There's definitely some diamonds in the rough, and I clung to those diamonds. But guess what? I also clung to the shit because I was happy that it even existed. And there was a lot of that, right? A lot of that with those early MCU films where it's like, wow, this exists.
Yeah.
And it's not dog shit.
Yeah.
The fact that it wasn't dog shit was good enough for me. By God, it was very much good enough for me. Mm-hmm. And then the second thing, which this was more of the gimmick, but it was a good gimmick. And I think it ultimately paid off in the end.
Yeah.
Which was this overarching connective story where everything basically connects to the Avengers. Everything was about connecting back to them, and even more than that, specifically Iron Man. And sometimes they could overdo it, sometimes it could get annoying, sometimes you just go like, I wish they would focus more on just telling this original story. But overall, it was obviously a positive. Like, I don't think anyone can deny that. The way they connected it. And I couple that with the fact that I'm just so happy this thing even exists in the first place. And it was very easy to ride that wave for a decade. But I'm not, once it hit that decade, and by the time I got to Endgame, it's just like, yeah, I've seen all this.
One thing I will say, this is for, I found an interesting similarity here. You say the decade point. A lot of people, including you, were beginning to feel a little bit of, they're not similar in what's, I think, ailing the different studios, but there definitely began a noticeable decline with Pixar post Toy Story 3, this whole past decade, basically. So, which is to say, and Pixar had probably the most financial success with those sequels, but from a critical standpoint, it wasn't the originality that studio was known for, and you were very critical of, and rightfully so. The point there being is, when you say decade, it is hard to sustain success for a decade, number one. Number two, longer than a decade. Right.
Yes, obviously. Right? And then with, like, what was it, 22 films? Like, Jesus. Most get to, like, 6, and people are like, stop already. Or even 4. But these fuckers did 22, right? I don't think I'm weird for going like, okay, just a typical superhero film is just not enough, even with all the Avengers connections. It's just not enough for me anymore. I just can't care.
I feel like that's kind of natural. And I wonder if perhaps we're underestimating just a tad bit, because I feel like you and I often feel like we're alone on an island when it comes to like some of the takes that we have. But I feel like at some point there is going to be a setting in of, well, where is this going, right? Because what sustained the Marvel Cinematic Universe was the promise that this was going to have a conclusion. And it had that conclusion, right? And this is a very distinct image I have in my mind. The last time I saw Avengers Endgame in the theater, I was walking out, and this one guy said to me, because we both walked out at the same time, he said to me, "There's no point in waiting for a post-credit scene because it's the end, right?" Yeah, it was a good end. And to me, the impression I had from that guy was like he was beyond satisfied that this is over. And he didn't seem like he needed any more after Endgame. That's kind of why endings are a big thing. And that's not to say that, the MCU couldn't have continued. I think you and I over the months have said that there would have been very creative decisions to have been made to sustain, I guess, the success of the movies, but you have to take a different approach is the point that you're saying.
I hadn't gotten to my point yet, which was after that, my hope, well, both me and yours hope, which was we're going to say, and again,
Kyle's too.
Feige.
Kyle's too. I want to say this to be fair to Kyle, because I don't want people to get the wrong impression. He comes.
I never called him out.
Well, let's not tempt fate. Let's preempt that a little bit. I think all of us come from a similar place. Although he did seem to be the multiverse stuff. My impression was
it's gonna work on him.
Is enough to quench his thirst in the moment.
Yeah.
So
yes. I never questioned that, but.
And that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. Just to be clear about that, I don't want people to get the wrong impression. If this works for you, good.
Did he steal your puppy? What's going on?
Maybe. I don't know what happened. No, I just don't want people to have the wrong impression that we're like, oh well, you're a terrible person for like being excited for these things. And sometimes people can have that impression when we bash.
You're a
things.
Terrible person if you like the Fantasy Fair. It's the only time you're a terrible person. What was I saying? Oh yeah, okay. So then even Feige was like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna go off in a different direction and do this and do that." And it's like, you have bought a decade's worth of goodwill. Go for it. Fucking focus more on the stories, do some interesting shit.
And in fairness, there was a little taste of it with the announcement of Thor: Love and Thunder, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
That's the thing, right? Even though I wasn't fucking in love with any of the announcements, really, again, there was like, oh wow, Thor: Love and Thunder. I'm fucking there. I'm excited. Guardians 3, I'm excited. What's it called? WandaVision theoretically could be cool. Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. Oh, they're getting Sam Raimi. Yeah. Oh shit. There was hints that it would be horror like. Oh, by the way, maybe this is why what's his name left the project.
No, I know why. I know this is why. I have a sneaking suspicion once the whole multiverse connections started to become clear, my thought went immediately to Scott Derrickson, the original director of Doctor Strange, when it was announced he was leaving the project. Because I remember when they had originally talked about this, I think Comic-Con last year, right? That they were teasing a horror element. And he really wanted to go for that.
And then Kevin Feige was immediately like, well, it's not a horror movie, like right after. And then...
We should have seen that coming then.
Yeah, at this point, they're going to have a scene where someone jumps out and says boo, and then that's all good. That's the horror element as far as I'm concerned, because holy shit. But there was a lot of reasons to go like, oh, wow, I was like, oh my God, maybe they're doing it. Maybe they're going for it. They're going to do all these fun, interesting things that, by the way, DC is doing right now.
Oh my God, yeah.
They're really fucking doing it. And then this multiverse shit. And then it just makes me go like, of course. Like, why did I ever think they wouldn't do this? And it's, again, to me...
You say DC, they're the ones that announced it first. They were the ones that were going into this bold direction.
Flash, right? For one movie, though.
Yeah.
It was
right, yeah. But to be fair to them, they did it first, and then Feige was like, nah, yeah, I want to...
Simpsons did it.
Yeah.
I guess it worked in his favor when he did it with BVS. But no, with this, it's just... I more than anything, I just wanted a creepy, weird, out there Doctor Strange movie. And now I know I'm just not going to get that. It's just going to be nothing but stupid references to like, oh, look at this is alternate Avengers. Oh, this is, alternate this and that.
It's just hard to see. It's hard to see how you sustain that throughout several movies and not getting old. It already feels like it's gotten old fast, but it feels like it's going to get played out at that point. You know what the sad thing is, though? This is the cruel twist of fate and how Feige likes to dig it at DC. But like Flashpoint is going to come out after all of those multiverse Marvel Cinematic Universe things, and I wonder how that's going to affect the success of that movie, because I do feel that there's going to be a potential tiring out with this multiverse. But to me personally, about what I find this disappointing, beside that aspect of this being a whole gimmick and everything, my hope, and I guess this is like saying the direction that I wanted the next 10 years of Marvel movies to look like, was a less emphasis on the interconnected universe and more focus on individual films and more emphasis on character instead of world building. That's what I really want. And that I see that in Thor: Love and Thunder. I definitely will see that in Guardians Volume 3. but everything else does not fit that bill. I have a slight bit of hope for Eternals because Chloe Zhao is directing it, and apparently she's gone on record saying, "Hey, they actually let me make a movie." So, in this case,
they all say that.
They all say that. But listen. I know that
Fuck them.
They all say that, but we have both said that there have been instances where they've allowed certain people to do that, right? Which there were
but
James
I'm not believing
Gunn,
it till I see it.
and I'm not taking her word for it either. I'm saying it. I'm choosing to be optimistic about her and that movie because she is also getting a lot of notoriety outside. Like, to me, like, Chloe Zhao is not a nobody anymore. She's not a no-name. I think at this point that she has currently not one but several award contending movies at this point has proven that she is going to be a formidable name in the coming years. And so I am choosing to be optimistic that her prowess is going to somehow bleed through the Marvel filter and come at a result. I have slim pickings here, okay, Peter? So, like, can you please not be critical about that?
I'm choosing to be nihilistic and saying fuck you.
All right, thank you. Glad we arrived at an agreement at that point. But that's about it.
Well, yeah. That's it.
What did I say?
No, nothing.
Okay, I guess this is over. I thought you were gonna say something else. We'll see. And when WandaVision, it's gonna come out pretty soon, I imagine. We'll have, I guess by December, we'll have an initial expectation about where this is gonna go, right? I think by December we'll have at least seen an episode of the show, right? They've announced the release date, right?
I'm pretty sure it was December. Okay.
So we'll come back for that, and if we have any impressions of The Mandalorian, maybe we'll come back for that, but we're not going to be doing week to week. If there will be a Mandalorian update, obviously something massive has to happen that changes the direction of the show. Otherwise, we'll have a full season review in December.
I think every episode is going to be that, though. Like,
do you?
This first episode is going to be like, oh my god, Boba Fett. And then the next episode will be like, oh my god, they fought with the Dark Sleeper. And then the next episode will be like, oh my god, Ahsoka Tano. Well, actually, I think I saw the director's list, and
Dave Filoni's wrote like one of those episodes midway through. Yeah.
So you know exactly which episode.
One. Yeah.
I think they're going to have some of those every single episode where it's like, oh my god, they showed this thing, you know. Get hyped.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but I don't know. A part of me feels like just binging it. But I got nothing else to do, so maybe I'll just watch it week to week. But if we review it, we'll definitely wait till the end.
Absolutely. And speaking of reviews, it's review time. And I think I don't know what else we can do to lighten the mood up more than talking about Borat's subsequent movie film, which is now streaming on Amazon Prime. Debuted on the night of the last presidential debate, and for a good reason. This thing's big, and at least to me, everyone's talking about this this movie, like in a really, really made waves. I feel, at least for the discussion. So Borat subsequent movie film, we're going to turn it over to Peter. He likes to give us a plot synopsis summary of what the movie was about. Of course, this movie stars Sacha Baron Cohen. And provided by our sponsor Letterboxd, which is currently in court right now for some disputes about a supposed tagline. But without further ado, Mr. Martinez.
The courts have decided, and the tagline is accurate.
The courts haven't decided a damn thing from what I've seen. To be
Jason Walliner. Borat subsequent movie film, delivery of prodigious bribe to American regime will make a benefit once glorious nation of Kazakhstan. 14 years after making a film about his journey across the US&A, Borat risks life and limb when he returns to America with his young daughter and reveals more about the American culture, the COVID-19 pandemic, and the political elections. That's a Borat.
So when it was announced that Sacha Baron Cohen made a Borat 2, what did you think? What did you expect?
What did I expect? I don't know. I really didn't. Because what's funny is it's one of those things where it's another sequel from a slightly older film.
14 years.
Yes. And the thing is, it's one of those things where it's a sequel to a film where when it came out, it was the concept for the film was fresh, new, and exciting. Whereas today, it's what every dipshit teenage YouTuber is doing.
Literally.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, look at me, look like an idiot on camera with these random people. Like, that's just... There's been so much of this. So much. And then another thing was what made Borat and beyond that, Sacha Baron Cohen so interesting was the way he's able to reveal the ridiculous nature of the people around him. There's nothing to reveal anymore.
Yeah.
At all.
Let me just say this. There's nothing, but there's also everything. I know this and you know this. There wasn't really anything new that we didn't know beforehand. At the same time, though, and this is, I guess, my thing on this. I think that the commentary with Borat 2 is, I think, especially powerful considering, you know, the year that we're living right now in 2020 with America. I feel like it maybe less of a sequel to Borat, but it feels like a continuation of what he did with, what was it? Was it on Showtime or HBO? The show that he did, Who is America? Right? In which, like, the point of,
yes.
The point of that was, I mean, he was doing the format that you just said, but you got the sense that it was more than just a prank or a joke, that there was actual substance that was being communicated across in doing that, and the people that he was exposing and what he was exposing about America. And in that regard, I don't think it's anything new, but I think that just makes it especially sad, right? That people out there would be shocked to find themselves for seeing the country and its people for who they really are, right?
I mean,
I don't know if I jumped the gun on that, but it was just to kind of like, because that is a central conversation being had with this movie, right? Is, well, it's not really offering anything new here in terms of the format, and a lot of the things that it's exposing we already know. So it could be like one of those things where, like, real life has hurt the impact of what this movie could have had. Yes, absolutely. But I guess my take on it would be that I don't think it has no value because of that. I think that's a message that needs to be pounded home, apparently.
Mm-hmm. Well, once again, you had never let me finish before I could finish what I was saying. Because you had asked me how I felt when I heard he was making a new film.
Let me make things easier for you. When you're finished with your point, let me know. You have the floor, Peter.
Thank you. I would like to vote to confirm Amy.
Oh my God. In that case, you do not have the floor. I mean, if that's what you're going to do with it. No, continue. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Because you had asked me how I felt when I heard.
Yes.
When I heard there was another Borat film. And then what I had mentioned was, like I said, the idea, this whole shtick that he does, kind of revealing people for who they are. It's just its own entire subgenre. It's everywhere now. And then beyond that, these people have revealed themselves for the last 4 years. My thought was like, what is there left to reveal? That being said, having seen the movie, I both hold those initial feelings somewhat true, and also thought the film was very funny and highly enjoyable, and I really fucking liked it.
I agree with you.
End scene.
I agree with you, man. I was laughing so hard throughout really all of this. Like, look, Sacha Baron Cohen is immensely talented, but maybe not more so for than being able to keep a straight face while doing the things that he has to do. I think we've said on many occasions that all of us
his camera crew.
Oh my god!
How do you record this shit and not start cracking up?
Right? Like, a lot of it's so in your face funny. How do you keep it together? Like, that's incredible. Like, he stays in character. Whatever character he's doing, he's committed to it. Not like one instance of him breaking it.
I feel you just have to lose yourself. Like, this, I am Borat,
Yeah.
And you can't yourself just not. You have to force yourself. Like, no, I would do this. This isn't funny to me. Like, you really, because, like we talked about before. I think when we were viewing something horror related, as we have done so much lately,
mm-hmm.
And we're talking about how, like, well, yeah, horror, it's here nor there as far as how much it affects me, but cringe, shit that makes me cringe, I can't, that's some shit you can't take. And like, if I was the cameraman for any of this, I would have walked away. Like, it's like, no, I can't take this. Like, my stomach would burst with just,
oh my god,
the gravity well created from me cringing so hard. Like, I'm gonna be honest, I technically have not seen the entire film, because there are a couple scenes where I'm like, I'll skip ahead just a couple minutes, because I just can't take that shit.
I forced myself to not skip forward certain scenes, and so what I did was I just looked down and I looked away.
Looked down.
I didn't stare it. I didn't stare at it for some of those moments, because it was woof.
I did not like. Well, I did like, but my stomach did not like. No. I don't. Sacha Baron Cohen is insanely talented, and when you say like it's funny, it is immediately funny. Like, the first minute, there's already shit being thrown at me, and I'm just fucking laughing.
I know.
It's so good. There's a joke. It had to be the first 3 minutes of the film about African leaders that I just I couldn't stop laughing. And it was he definitely pushed buttons. But I don't know. All of it is just so funny. Go ahead.
Obviously the movie is getting praised for those aspects. It's interesting when, looking over at the reviews, some have, said that it doesn't compare to the first one. Some have said that it's even better than the first one. Some have said that they didn't find this very funny because real life and whatever have you. Personally, I had a blast with this movie. I was laughing so unbelievably hard. And I actually also quite enjoyed the narrative that they strung together with Borat and his daughter, which I wasn't expecting to be invested in that at all, to be quite frank with you. I didn't think that I was going to be expected to take that seriously, but it was actually heartwarming in the middle of all of this. It was, I think, incredibly effective.
It's funny because when you look at Borat, I think of like cynical, gross, boundary pushing, fucking limits, humor, that kind of shit. I don't think touching.
Yeah, is.
But then surprisingly, out of nowhere, it is. It's cheesy to a certain extent, but like, it's fucking boring. So it's like, I don't know what you expect, but it's well done.
Yeah.
Like by the time the film ended, I was like, oh, I'm into this, and on more than just a cringing and laughing level. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Which also is something that I would not have guessed.
Right.
Going into it, I thought it was just gonna be, a couple hours of just outrageous shit, and I'm gonna be laughing and going like, oh, I can't watch this, and then it'll end and be like, oh yeah, that was a great time. But no, there was this through line, where I was like, oh, kind of got me in the heartstrings here at the end,
and it helped that. I mean, of course, Sacha is great. I think he's great in any role, especially with this one being so personal to him. But he found an amazing actor to bounce off him. And I think she was equally as good, if not better. Maria Baklava, who played Borat's daughter Tutar. Wow. There was just something so genuine. Like, it felt like it's like one of those performances like where you don't feel that you're watching a performance. It came off like you're watching an actual person, which I feel is even harder to pull off when you're doing nothing but the most cringe-worthy, ridiculously over-the-top things. Like, there was a scene where she was giving what was supposed to be for her an emotional speech to a group of conservative women about her first time masturbating.
That was one of the ones that was difficult for me to get through. Because you could see the women just go from like, oh.
And it's real though. Like that, there's some people that are questioning certain segments of the movie about whether or not it was staged or not. That wasn't one of those moments. That was genuine, like, cringe awkwardness going on.
That one was one of the tough ones. But what I'm surprised is, well, first, what I would like to know is, what is the casting process?
I don't know, man.
Because if you're Sacha Baron Cohen is good because he's a comedian. He's extremely talented, and he may have an idea, like going into a situation of what you're trying to achieve and what you're trying to do, but like it's not a script. You don't memorize shit and then say it. You have to evolve with the situation, basically. It's difficult, right? And then you got to be ready for anything that's thrown at you. And whatever might be said at you, or people fucking attacking you, like, so it's like, what's the process for getting someone like that? And I don't know what it was, the process, but he did a fantastic job because she's great, because she's absolutely thrown into those situations where they're playing off of each other.
Yeah.
And again, it's not scripted because they have to react to what these other people are saying. And none of it is written ahead of time. It's all real, the reactions.
There could be like an outline of like where you want a certain conversation to go. Mm-hmm. You can prepare some lines, but a lot of it is dependent on who you're bouncing off. And that is real people who you're basically interviewing for this, right? Like whether it be the the woman in the cake shop, or the, I guess, pastor / doctor in the clinic that they're speaking to. Like, you can expect, you can guess how it can go, but you can't entirely see it coming.
Yeah. Like one of the lines, it's in the trailer, and it's just one of those things where she's like, my daddy's the smartest man in the whole flat world. And it's just one of those lines where it seems like she yeah, it's just one of those things on the fly. She's responding, but it's just so funny. It feels like it was written. I don't know. She's really good. Like, and it really fascinates me. Like, what's the process?
Yeah.
Like, Sacha Baron comes up to you, and how do you test actresses for that? You know, do you have like a dry run where you're like, okay, so for your audition, you have to go into the ball and pretend to, I don't know, like, do this.
Hey, you have to be a master of improv, at least.
Yeah, you have to be masterful at improv. And not only that, you're bouncing off Sacha Baron Cohen, you're bouncing off people that don't know that they're part of this. You have to adapt, and she does it. She does it so well. She was one of the biggest surprises for the movie for me.
Yeah. I mean, again, I wasn't expecting to care, and I was invested. And actually was touching, as you said, with how their relationship grows, because this obviously, while all this stuff is happening, I mean, he just meets her already being 14 years old or 15, whatever. And the whole thing was, the movie ends up becoming him trying to sell her off to Vice President Mike Pence, because they want to give a gift to President Trump for being great, I guess, an ally of Kazakhstan. They're
trying to bring back the good name of Kazakhstan,
right?
And they think getting in the good graces of one McDonald Trump would
McDonald Trump
would I don't know. Would bring glory back to Kazakhstan.
I can't believe no one has thought, fuck the Democrats. They're so weak and so inept with communication. If they had just thrown that back at him, as like Trump's ongoing thing is he gives people nicknames. Imagine if one of them was like, call them the President McDonald Trump, how much of a gasket he would blow over.
It's funny because it's the most easiest there. And that's another thing too, right? Because I've often maintained that Trump has ruined comedy.
Yeah.
Like
Saturday Night Live. Let me tell you, Saturday Night Live is pathetic. I watched their skit over the weekend of the debate. It was sad. It was just so awful.
They're impossible. The Republican Party and Donald Trump and all of them have just become literally impossible to satirize, because there is no going higher than the ridiculousness that is Donald Trump, right? Like, you can't do it. And for me, Donald Trump has really ruined political comedy, right? Like, what can you do? If all the political shows that are comedic that cover politics, I feel have just nosedived.
The only one is John Oliver, but that's
John Oliver.
Yeah,
but John Oliver doesn't cover Trump.
Yeah, he's more of a policy heavy guy.
Yeah, I really like John Oliver.
Yeah,
he's been great, but the only one, and I even said this beforehand, who's actually, and this is how I know Sacha Baron Cohen is talented, the only one who's been able to thrive during this time is Sacha Baron Cohen.
Yeah.
Because, like you mentioned before, that Who is America?
Oh my God.
Who is America?
Oh my God.
Has some of the genuine funniest shit I've ever seen. Like, the funniest shit. Everyone knows about, like, that elected representative that literally showed his ass and like, you know, backed it up. and then was screaming the N-word and all of this. But my personal favorite was when they're in some deep red hick town trying to sell them the idea of opening a mosque in their town.
Oh my god.
It is breathtakingly funny. So he really has been the only one who's been able to do it. And again, it makes me look at SNL and all these other left-leaning political comedy people and going like, pathetic, you people. Sacha Baron Cohen has been just holding up comedy on his shoulders for 4 years. And he's delivering one last blow with a Borat sequel. And it works because it's fun. Like in the very beginning, I knew it was coming, but just the low, like, since I've been gone, he told me an evil leader rose who represented
Barack
everything. Barack Obama.
I did.
Like, I knew it was coming. Like the whole shit with like Melania.
Oh
And like,
my
you mean I could be the next Melania? With the cage. But all of that, when he got the baker to write "Jews will not replace us."
It's like, okay, so I think that's the key part of all of this that connects Borat, Who is America, and Sacha Baron Cohen, as to kind of like really sell home the point about why it is that this brand of humor actually works. Because, okay, so what is being done as a result of all of this? I mean, it's hilarious because people are being, they're accidentally or intentionally, depending on your point of view, caused to expose who they are in these highly ridiculous situations. And I feel perhaps why there is such weight to those sequences is because of the substance. And that is, at the end of the day, while this is funny, it really kind of isn't, because there are people that exist like this and think like this and do things like this. And I don't know, it may almost even be kind of a dark humor, because, I mean, at the same time, though, this is the only way to kind of make fun of Republicans, is you get them to show you who they really are. And they're literal cartoons.
Yeah. As I think both me and you would agree, there's no such thing as a moderate Republican anymore. Trump literally has a 95% approval rating amongst Republicans. If you want to know, like, and honestly, the other day I actually sat back and I'm like, okay, let me think about this. What would I consider to be a moderate Republican? Mm-hmm. And who would fit that bill in today's day and age?
Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, Democrats, like, the moderate Democrats are sane conservatives. Mm-hmm. Like, that's the closest to me you're going to get to a sane conservative. It's the moderate Democrats. So for me, these people are crazy. And I think you see a real shift in Sacha Baron Cohen's comedy from the original Borat to this one, mm-hmm. right? And it's unfortunate, but I really think it's necessary. And I think a lot of people have followed suit. Mm-hmm. And I've been thinking about it. Because you know how a lot of people say, oh, I get your politics out of my movies,
stop inserting politics in entertainment. Basically.
Yeah. And I mean, I've noticed this for a while, but I genuinely didn't know it was this bad, which is a lot of conservatives don't understand the things they're ingesting, right?
Yeah.
So like Borat originally, him and his people in his village and the things he says, are deeply racist and misogynistic and anti-Semitic and all of this. And it's meant to make fun of those types of beliefs. But I think a lot of people just look at it and then they laugh and agree. I think that's another way that these people have killed satire, is that you have to be utterly blatant for a lot of these people to understand the point being made. Because I don't want to bring this up for the millionth time, but you'll have people going like, Star Wars isn't political, you're making it SJW. RoboCop wasn't political, ridiculous. I've heard so many crazy statements about people, and I've slowly realized that a lot of people just don't think beyond the surface of what they're watching. Remember when people lost their shit because Netflix correctly pointed out that Matrix is a veiled trans allegory? And it's like, damn, maybe when the Wachowski brothers turned into the Wachowski sisters, that would have clicked a little bit to some people, but people were like, oh, really? You're going to insert the transgender agenda into the Matrix? And it's like, the Wachowski sisters made the Matrix? Like, how can you not understand? And I think it's the same with the Borat, right? So it's before you... How do I put this? Nowadays, you need to be really overt with your message so people can fucking get the hint. Because if not, you're in the danger of people just... I like going like, LOL, he's racist. That's awesome. You know what I mean? So I think by the end of Borat, if the whole film wasn't already more overt with its political commentary, it literally ends with that flashcard, vote. Now vote. Or be execute. And I actually love it. I love just the overtness of the political message, because at this point in time, I think it's extremely necessary.
Yeah.
I kind of went on a long rant with that.
But I think it gets to the heart about why it is that this is actually good, and why, I wasn't expecting Borat's subsequent movie film to be easily one of my favorite movies of the year, but it kind of is. Just for like the sheer the subject matter, the substance, but also of course the hilarity. I mean, it's hard to come up with like what was the best part of it. Like I think I lost my mind when Sacha Baron Cohen first entered the CPAC conservative convention in a full Ku Klux Klan hood, announcing himself as Stephen Miller. Sorry, I'm late. And I think it was kind of hilarious how like a bunch of people in the room looked shocked. And I'm like thinking to myself, bitch, you shouldn't be shocked. That's exactly who you are. Shut the fuck up. You have no reason to be like outraged by this. And even, it's hilarious, no one stops him. He just walks into the bathroom and he changes. So really, no one said anything. So I feel like that wouldn't happen, I think, in most places that aren't conservative, right? Like, no one said nothing to him about that. He just kept walking.
Yeah. I mean, you had some people give weird looks.
Uh-huh.
But unless there's footage that Sacha hasn't released. But no one, like, going like, hey, get the fuck out. Or any of that, right?
He wasn't kicked out until he was in a Donald Trump suit.
Which was another really good one.
How do you plan for this, man? Like, everything has to go right in order to pull this off. Like, he busts the doors open. Mike Pence turns, and then like he announces Michael Penis.
I got the girl. But the thing that actually just made me crack up was as he was being taken away, telling him, like, you're fired.
There was a look in his eyes.
He got all pissed.
Yeah, he did. Apparently, in some, I heard this on a podcast that some in the crowd, when that happened, thought that was actually Trump. And that's why the USA chant started.
You're going to hate me, but I'm going to defend them.
Okay.
That's absolutely some shit Trump would pull. 100%. Like, just randomly in the middle of the rally, just walking through his subjects, blessing them like Jesus, as he, fucking, a line of hands, high fives, and then jumps onto the stage, with Michael Pence. He absolutely would pull some shit like that. So I don't blame them for going like, oh shit, is that him? And then also, the makeup was really good.
Wasn't it?
Yeah. You know how good it was? There was clear fucking, like, pictures and shots, back when it first happened, and you could see it, his face, and no one knew it was Sacha Baron Cohen. No one could make out that it was him. So that's pretty good. That's some good ass makeup. What I do wonder, though, I feel like he wasn't actually. I feel like he was carrying a dummy.
Yeah, it couldn't have been. No,
I don't think that was actually her. I feel like he was carrying like a dummy of a girl. Because when the police walk him out, like, she's not with him.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But what's also really cool about this movie? It really is a time capsule, right?
Yeah.
Because when they started filming it was obviously made with the clear intent to satirize, Trump's America and all that. But clearly, halfway through filming, the pandemic hit. Right. And they didn't plan for that. No one planned for that, but it happened. And it became an integral part of the film, to say the least.
There's a section where he's singing about the Wuhan flu. For 20 minutes, he got those like Republican rally people to sing along to injecting Obama with the Wuhan flu, like the Saudis do. I think that's what the lyrics were.
Chop him up like the Saudis do, which is of course a reference to when the Saudi government murdered that
Jamal Khashoggi, the reporter for the Washington Post.
The reporter. Oh my gosh, these people. But again, I really want some behind the scenes shit. I really do.
I know. Or
even just audio commentary, right? Because you have to, in my mind, and I've actually watched the movie a couple of times now. There's a couple of things that jump out to me, because obviously the movie could not, when they started filming it, they probably had this idea of a story, right?
Yeah.
It could not have included COVID-19. So when the pandemic hit, they probably had to restructure the story entirely to sort of become around that event. And then beyond that, I feel as if when they started the project, they wanted their big finale to be with Michael Pence. I think their hope, their goal,
right,
was to get, the whole movie was supposed to surround Michael Pence. And I think at some point they realized they couldn't get Michael Pence, so they turned it to Rudy Giuliani. I really think that's what happened.
The hardest part about it was the hardest thing to believe was how incredibly easy it was to get Rudy Giuliani.
Yeah. Honestly, I feel, and maybe Sacha did try, but a part of me feels like he could have gotten Trump.
How with the Secret Service and the White House?
That's right. They probably do backgrounds and shit.
It's kind of impossible.
But it's Trump. I doubt they do, though. Like, I feel, because you know how he adores OAN and all these kids.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking Alex Jones got an interview with Trump. I don't know. I feel like she could have, because it seems like for a while she was masquerading as like one of these
reporters,
right?
Yeah.
Like these OAN reporters.
Yeah.
He adores OAN. I feel like at some point that could have happened with her, especially, right? Because she's, at that point, no one knew she had any connection to Sacha Baron Cohen. I don't know. Maybe that's just wishful thinking on my end, but I feel like it maybe could have happened. But yeah, Rudy Giuliani's a fucking moron. Like the fact that they got him was just hilarious. Oh my god. And I'll ask you again. I'm gonna go against the grain here from most on the left. I think he probably was just tucking his shirt in.
I think there's a good chance it was just that.
But my next response would be, I don't care.
I agree 1,000%. I don't give a shit what it was. It's funny and it looks
it's
bad.
Funny as fuck.
I think there's enough. Yeah, I feel like it's not as obvious about what was happening. I think if he was tucking his shirt in, I guess it was taking a while to tuck the shirt in. And then he also, if you noticed, there was a quick when Borat basically crashes into the room with like, she's only 15, she's too old for you. Which is an amazing line.
Old for you.
If you notice him, like he immediately jumps up. I mean, but he's an old man. I mean, it's hard to be sure.
Again, if I had to lean one way or the other, he was probably tucking his shirt in. But he's such an old piece of shit ghoul.
Yeah.
The fact that it's become this big scandal just makes me laugh.
No, yeah, he deserves it, and I'm glad to laugh at him. It is weird though that he willingly.
He
went
also
to the
was a
bedroom.
little.
He was a little touchy feely.
That old. There's like this version of like creepy old men.
Yeah.
That's like, oh, sweetie, come here. Like, I don't know. Like you see it in the creepy old men that are like, oh, they get a little touchy, it's, rub the knee kind of thing, and it's like, ugh. And he was portraying a little bit of that during the interview. Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, he's a piece of shit, so any negative news for him is just funny to me.
I think we missed out on an amazing opportunity. In an alternate reality, Trump would have appointed him to Attorney General.
Oh, God.
Remember, I think Rudy was being considered for VP once upon a time. Before Mike Pence.
Yeah. And obviously they went with Mike Pence because he's the calm version. So, but I honestly think they didn't need it. Imagine if conservatives had as shitty political instincts as Democrats. Like when fucking Hillary went with
Tim Kaine.
Tim
forgot
Kaine.
his name.
I already forgot his name. I knew Kaine was in there somewhere. What a moron. Holy shit.
Yeah.
But no, this movie was very funny to me. And again, it's heartwarming. And a lot of people are like, again, going back to what I said earlier, it's pretty heavy-handed with his messaging. In this day and age, I think you need to be heavy-handed. I think the lines in the sand are so huge, right? And so apparent. I don't know, like you need to make the message loud and clear, I feel. Because I think in the past there's been this need to be like, oh, well, like I said, that both side-isms, interpretation, all that here in this jazz. It's like, no, one side's clearly fucking insane, and we should probably do something about it.
God bless Sacha Baron Cohen. That's my review. Go watch it. It's hilarious. So shall we move on to the next Baron Cohen starring feature? The Trial of Chicago 7, written and directed by Mr. Aaron Sorkin. Interesting tidbit about this before we start with Peter's summary of, what the movie is about. Back in 2007, once upon a time, Steven Spielberg was supposed to direct this movie. And at that point, Sacha Baron Cohen was attached. So he's been attached to this project for a very long time. And he was always meant to play this character. But
I can definitely see Spielberg directing.
Oh, yeah.
100%.
Absolutely. Yeah. If anything, in terms of like what, real quick observation, Aaron Sorkin and Spielberg, it's occurred to me, have some similarities in terms of some similar tendencies that they like with these, not just with the interest of this kind of movie, but on playing some stuff up.
Yeah, 100%.
So, with your synopsis sponsored by Letterboxd.
Well, yeah, we can never forget our sponsor. Directed by Aaron Sorkin, The Trial of the Chicago 7.
Mm-hmm.
In 1968, democracy refused to back down. What was intended to be a peaceful protest at the 1968 Democratic National Convention turned into a violent clash with police and the National Guard. The organizers of the protest, including Abby Hoffman, Jerry Rubin, Tom Hayden, and Bobby Seale, were charged with conspiracy to incite a riot, and the trial that followed was one of the most notorious in history. So yeah, you got yourself another Sorkin joint with a pretty huge fucking cast.
Oh yeah.
Sacha Baron Cohen, Eddie Redmayne. Oh fuck, I don't want to mess this up. Yaha Abdul Mati.
Yahar Abdul, yeah.
Is it Yahar?
Yeah.
Yahar Abdul Mati, Jeremy Strong. This motherfucker.
Mark
this is
Rylance.
How I knew Mark
Rylance. Yes, I love Mark Rylance.
And Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
I love
Michael
him too.
Keaton.
Oh God, yes.
Frank Langella. There's a lot. Holy shit, yeah. But this,
real quick, just to give people a history. So with Aaron Sorkin, this is his second movie he's directed. The first one was Molly's Game, which you have seen. I have not.
I have.
The work of Aaron Sorkin that I know of, that I have seen personally, his written work, Social Network and Steve Jobs, both of which are very good films.
Yes. Sorkin is a good writer, but he can get very cringy very fast. Depending on the work. Sometimes he hits it out of the park. Like I Social Network I thought was great. Steve Jobs, really good.
Mm-hmm.
There's some real good shit in Steve Jobs. This I thought for the most part worked really well. And then there's other shit that
Newsroom?
like there's oh god, there's some scenes from Newsroom
I know
that just like you could tell he's very much ideal moderate liberal with a capital L.
The West Wing variety of neoliberal. Yeah.
Well, yeah, he is the West Wing.
Yeah.
But it's those things where it's like these small victories, quote unquote victories, that literally mean nothing, but he plays them like they're the greatest thing, like they're storming the beaches of Normandy type shit.
Yeah.
it's, again, sometimes it actually works really well, depending on the subject material, and other times it's just cringy as shit. But no, I do like Sorkin, and I will say this: I saw Molly's Game. Molly's Game was actually another one of his good ones. I liked Molly's Game, but as a director, it was flat.
That was his first
boring.
movie, right?
Yeah, it was his first movie. This one was a lot better. I definitely saw. I felt like there was improvement from Molly's Game to this film as far as direction. But yeah, how did you feel about this one?
Very similar to you. I like these kind of movies. Yes, I do. I think of Al Pacino in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where he says, "Oh, what a picture."
Guns violent. I love that shit. But for you, it's politicians, historical figures.
Mm-hmm.
Spielberg. I love that shit.
Yeah, I love that stuff. No, this is really good. But not without its setbacks and not without the moments that you mentioned that were cringeworthy. I think okay. The performances, I think, were great and in most cases stole the movie across the board, but none more so I loved Baron Cohen. The small moments with Michael Keaton, Mark Rylance. Oh my God, what an actor. And I'll tell you what, if he could win an Oscar for Bridge of Spies, he can definitely win again for Trial of Chicago 7, because he was really acting the hell out of this one. And I think it was Frank Langara, I don't know how to pronounce his name, as the judge. He was very comical, but also very disturbing when he needed to be.
I thought he was one of the best
Yeah.
as far as like acting and characters.
Oh, yes, he was great. So I'm hoping he gets some love from the award circuit this year. From a writing perspective, I think it's excellently set up. It is one of those things where like Sorkin's writing is obvious in the sense that how he writes dialogue. It is very like snappy, quick, and witty, and obviously unlike anything how it actually went down in history.
Yeah.
It felt the need to be very like to the point about, and there were certain lines that felt maybe we could do without this, and that maybe could be indicative of him overall, with not only in terms of how it's directed, but how it's executed and how it's written overall, in the sense that some of those moments can't, like the ending. That's the one that sticks out for me, where
Yeah.
it was so well intentioned, but I just think it was a complete misfire, and it felt very much like the end of The Post, right? The Steven Spielberg movie. Although in this case, I don't know what it was. This one felt more cringeworthy, even though like I love what you're doing on paper, but with the music swelling and everyone like applauding and everything getting louder, it felt very much to me like a difficulty Spielberg's been having lately with his political movies. And I wonder if you were to put Sorkin and Spielberg into this kind of a movie in the future, I wonder what the result would be, since they do have those similarities there.
Thinking about that, I think the reason why that shit just doesn't work is because like old political dramas and shit like that was like, oh, a court case on slavery, right? And I think the reason you could have that like resounding at the end, you know, like that resounding music and
like Amistad, you mean?
Amistad,
Anthony Hopkins, Spielberg. There was kind of a court case with the.
Oh, I wasn't referencing anything specific.
Okay, sorry, but okay.
But it, you know, something like that. The difference is like slavery doesn't exist like that today, right? So it's like, oh yeah, like there was change made. But with something like The Post or the trial of the Chicago 7, you have that big resounding like music, like, oh, something was accomplished. But I live in 2020 and I know, no, it wasn't accomplished. Like, shit's still bad in this specific area, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it just rings, that triumphant ending rings very hollow. And the more I think about it, I think the one who knew how to handle this best was Spike Lee. And the ending of
The Five
Black
Bloods?
Klansman.
Oh, I thought you meant to Five Bloods, because I was like, what?
No. Black Bloods. But Black Klansman, where you have like this historical piece with, you know, the KKK, and it's like, you could maybe get this feeling of like, damn, shit was crazy back then. And then it ends with showing footage of today. Like, you know, shit ain't changed, fight's still real today. And that to me, that rings so much more true, and more, it works better emotionally than having this big resounding like, oh. And then especially because the title cards, you know, as everyone's clapping and it's like, oh, everything's great, and it's like, oh yeah, like this one committed suicide, this one ended up dead. And you know, as everyone's cheering and clapping, it's like, god damn. Like, okay, I guess it's a happy ending if you say so.
Uh-huh.
Oh, and then also with the Sorkinisms, right? Like the Sorkin language. How do I put this? The Sorkin writing works depending on who the characters are, right? So something with The Social Network, it's supposed to be these hyper intelligent asshole Harvard douchebags. So the fact that they're all these like snarky, you know, quick with the comebacks with each other, you know, type of talking fits, right? Like it makes sense. The same with Steve Jobs, right? Steve Jobs, because this genius Steve Jobs. The fact that you have that sort of dialogue makes sense. Here, for the most part, it works. For the most part, I definitely think it works. Based on the type of people, like they definitely have a reputation. Obviously, the people on trial and the way they speak. Then you have the lawyers and the judges. But there are those moments where, and this is what Sorkin does sometimes, where a character feels like it almost looks at the audience and says, just spouts out Sorkin's personal beliefs. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like when, what's his name? I don't remember the characters' names, but Eddie Redmayne and Cohen are getting into it.
That's what I was thinking of. That's what my mind went to when you were talking about that point.
And Eddie Redmayne just goes off. And again, I think this is on the surface, it's actually a really interesting dynamic, right? Like these two pretty ultra progressive individuals that are fighting for change, and they have two very drastic ways of trying to get it done. Again, very timely, this film, extremely timely. But you have one character just sort of say it, right, without exploring it. And again, it does feel like Sorkin just almost trying to get it off his chest.
Yeah.
It is kind of funny, but
yeah. I it ain't the worst thing in the world, but it definitely felt like really ultra specific.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, well, you definitely had something to say here.
And apparently there was some clips that came to light over that weekend when the movie was released on Netflix, that Sorkin had written about this before in other works of his. Like there is apparently scenes of Jeff Daniels from The Newsroom literally giving the exact same talking points on that historical instance.
Mm-hmm. No, there's literal YouTube videos of, again, I get people colloquially call it Sorkinisms, where there's specific lines that he always uses.
Yeah.
And I think he even used one of them in this movie.
Yeah.
Where it's like, fire me or shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
I think that's like one of the lines. And like they go through all of his movies, and then the Newsroom and The West Wing, and like there's very like specific lines that he says. I don't know. Sorkin's an interesting one.
Yeah. But his stuff's always fun, though. That's the thing about it. It's like
it's never boring. It's always entertaining.
Yeah.
It's always entertaining.
Like, I think a lot of things that he works on. Well, I think if you want to consider Chicago 7 and Newsroom. Well, I never really got into Newsroom. Never watched it. But I think flawed work in most cases, as in most things are flawed, by nature, it's very entertaining. So like, even though like I can, as a film fan, pinpoint like certain lines that are like, well, man, that's really flashing in your face. That is the point, though. Sorkin, that is his style. And a lot of this movie was a lot of flash, in terms of also how it was edited. Now, I haven't seen Molly's Game, but apparently you say it's a vast improvement, because there was actually some kind of pizzazz here, whereas it was just flat in Molly's Game.
Yeah, the direction in Molly's Game can be best described as competent. It's not terrible, but it's just competent. The characters were in frame. That kind of thing.
Yeah. Whereas
here, I think, with editing and the way certain things are shot, I definitely think it was a lot better. And then also like the dialogue, I also think it works well because it's a group of like a bunch of people, right?
Yeah.
So it's not just two people going back and forth, like just quick wit. It's like someone will say something, and then some other person will say something else. They'll respond, and then they'll respond back, and then a third person will jump in. So the flow makes sense, I think. Mm-hmm. Again, this film, unbelievably timely. It feels like it was written yesterday in order
does.
to win awards based off what's going on right now. Like, fuck, they got lucky.
This is like the best, most Oscar bait movie that Netflix has ever had on their caliber. If they can't win Best Picture with this, I mean...
Yeah, like this is teed up for the Academy, right? Because it's left wing. It is politically charged.
Mm-hmm.
It is, but it's not too politically charged.
Yeah.
It is Spielberg. It is Sorkin. It is Rylance. It is Sacha Baron Cohen.
Courtroom dramas, baby.
Courtroom drama. Eddie Redmayne, like,
yep.
Holy shit! Like, this is Oscar bait if I've ever seen it.
Yeah.
Will they bite? I don't know. They're in a year where they're more poised than ever to bite. This is because I think more often than not, people use the term Oscar bait as sort of like a pejorative.
Yeah, absolutely. People use it. Yeah.
I necessarily wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if I were to describe good Oscar bait,
mm-hmm.
I think this is good Oscar bait.
Yeah. But this is really good. This is a good
mm-hmm.
movie. There's flaws for sure. And as we mentioned, Sorkin himself has tendencies that kind of... that ending could have been so much better than it was. Let me just... Because I was laughing.
Mm-hmm.
And I probably
give you little eye rolls. Like,
yeah. But like...
It did... You know what, though? It did piss me off because it made me go like, damn. Remember when people gave a shit about war and people dying in it? Do you
It
remember
pissed me off
that?
for a different reason because
Yeah.
it pissed me off for Republicans are always shit in government, and of course this was a know nothing
Nixon.
story that
Yeah.
Nixon made into existence, and these people were jailed because we needed to because we wanted to because they're the left and we have to
We need to
persecute
make
the left.
examples of them.
Yeah,
These dangerous terrorists. Again, it's so timely. It's so
Yeah.
timely. And by the way, the game hasn't changed.
at
right?
all.
At all. And it's not just the movie, right? Because remember, this movie was made before any of this shit started happening. With Antifa and Black Lives Matters and all the protests and the fucking buildings on fire. And there's this comic. Not a comic, like a... What's the word? Political cartoon?
Mm.
From the 1960s, and it's like Martin Luther King, and it's like, oh well, I'm ready to go out on another peaceful protest, and it shows like, oh, the streets, violence everywhere, and the streets are on fire and buildings and da-da-da, because they use the same shit when Martin Luther King marched, and during that time, like, violent, scary protests, law and order, guys, law and order. The game hasn't changed. And again, because it's so obvious that the game hasn't changed, that like triumphant ending of everything went to shit, but it's okay because we had this symbolic victory, I guess. And again, this is probably, it's much more a personal thing. I could give a fuck less about symbolic victories at this point in my life when it comes to politics. I want power.
Especially since all the real victories have been all had by the evil people.
Yeah, like fuck your symbolic victory. I want real transformative victory. That's what I want. So, this whole like, hey, nothing changed, but they gotta, I don't know, they got this fucking courtroom to clap. Like, that just rings so hollow to me.
Yeah.
But overall, very entertaining. Very
Absolutely.
fun.
Yeah.
Because I turned it on just to like turn it on. Like, well, maybe I'll watch the first 5 minutes. But I ended up just watching the whole thing. Because that's the one great thing about Sorkin dialogue. It just flows.
Yeah.
Right? It just flows and flows.
It didn't drag at all. No. Well,
and you know what? I'll admit it. I liked Mark Rylance in this film.
I was waiting for that, Peter.
Were you ready?
I was waiting for that because, like, you have a personal vendetta against Mark Rylance for winning the Academy Award for The Great Bridge of Spies and everything.
You mean stole the award?
Well, I guess, tomato, from one Sly Stallone, But
He was better in this film.
He was great. He was great in this movie. I loved him. I loved a lot of it. And again, it's part of why this is the typical stuff that the Oscar people like, right? It's these these showy performances.
I will say these kinds of films, they are cozy.
Yeah.
It's me and you who like these kinds of films. There's just sort of a cozy aspect
Absolutely.
to it. In the same way a Marvel film might be.
Yeah. At the same time, there is stuff in the movie that I will give it credit for where that isn't as cozy. And because it is so relevant, like the stuff with the protesters and the cops charging at each other and all the brutality that was being had, that was visceral.
When they were hiding their name tags.
Oh my God.
It's crazy now with cameras. What's crazy is if the phones had existed back then, the shit they would have caught would have been fucking insane. right? Because I mean, you have like the newscast cameras now that show the hoses being put on protesters and the dogs sicked on them, but nowadays you see some fucked up shit at those protests, and this is with them knowing everyone has a phone in their pocket. Back then, holy shit.
But even then, though, as we discussed months back, cable news doesn't show you that stuff. It's all on Twitter. All the real horrible shit's on Twitter. But cable news doesn't really show a lot of the brutality that we've seen over this past year, especially this past summer. So I think to an extent they still feel comfortable around that. And they've been emboldened by this president, who they idolize as their god. So, I mean, there's definitely that going on. One last thing here that I found particularly shocking was, because this is a real case, right? There was a bombshell moment with the former attorney general saying something in favor of the defendants. And that basically would have gotten them off the hook. But the establishment was like, thank you for that. We're not going to let the jurors hear that, but thank you for coming in. Have a good day. We want this result was already decided on. We don't need you to come and ruin everything. So bye-bye.
That just felt so 2020.
Didn't it?
It did. And it's just such bullshit.
Yeah.
And I thought when you said bombshell moment, I thought you were going to discuss what happened to what's his name's fuck.
Oh, you mean the one defendant that
Bobby Seale.
Yeah, Bobby Seale. Oh no, that's not a bombshell. That was unbelievably disturbing.
And you have that moment where God, you've seen it so much where the judge is like scoffs like, I've never been accused of being a racist. And it's like, you bitch. You son of a bitch. Like, so typical. But they actually softened it a bit. Because in real life, he was in those restraints for 3 days, I believe, before, the mistrial and all that. And they have, what's his name? Fred Hampton.
Fred Hampton?
Of the, shoot. I think I'm saying it wrong. Let me Google real quick. Oh, no, I'm saying it right. Of the Black Panther Party. He was his friend.
Right,
that was talking to him, and then he ended up being murdered. The story with him is fucking crazy, the way the fucking FBI murdered him. But
executed is more like it.
Yeah, no. It is executed. I want to get this on tape. They're coming out with a movie on his life.
Yeah.
Called,
okay.
It's Judas and Black Jesus or something like that. That's the title. I can't remember exactly. No, Judas and the Black Messiah. That's what it's called. Produced by Ryan Coogler. I think director Shaka King. I think the one who's playing him is what's his name from Get Out?
Daniel Kaluuya.
I sent the trailer a while ago.
Here we go.
Did you watch it?
I have no recollection.
Okay.
I have no recollection.
I just wanted to get that on tape. Okay. Because it looks really good. It looks really, really good. So when he came out here within the case, I'm like, oh, fuck. I wonder if they're going to touch on him being murdered. And then they did, halfway through the case. Yeah, I just want to get that out there. Get it on tape.
Trial of Chicago 7 is currently streaming on Netflix, and Borat's subsequent film is streaming on Amazon Prime. Both films will have more. We'll be hearing more from I'm sure, as we ramp up to the end of the year. Oh boy. But anyway, thank you all for listening here. We have relatively no year left, but a lot of year left in 2020. The very next time that we do one of these shows, we will hopefully know the outcome of the election. And as Sam Jackson said in Jurassic Park, hold on to your butts. Oh boy, here we go. Oh boy, I hope we live to see the next couple of weeks, I'll tell you that, because here we are. But thank you all. Catch our shows every single Sunday, sometimes on Thursday. Remember, November we got Guillermo del Toro, Good Place, and more coming at you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.